The Battlefield franchise has, in my opinion, delivered some of the best all-out warfare experiences available on the market. And a huge reason for that are its incredible maps with unparalleled size and incredible detail. I recently made a video on Battlefield's craziest maps, which many people enjoyed, but today I want to talk about Battlefield's best maps. Maps that played so well, looked visually stunning, and became examples of the franchise's best experiences. So let's dive into Battlefield's best maps with possibly the most obligatory pick, Wake Island. This map started it all, quite literally, as DICE's first publicly playable version of Battlefield was their public demo for 1942, and it only had this map. And it's important to understand that when 1942 launched, large-scale FPS battles were basically unheard of. Maybe tribes could sort of do some of that stuff, but not at this scope and scale. And DICE really needed these large, beautiful maps to showcase their tech, and Wake Island delivered with large open spaces for vehicles to fight over, smaller bases and objectives for infantry players, runways for aerial combat, landing boats that could do beach assaults, watchtowers, massive battleships. Wake Island quite literally had it all. And over the years, DICE have reimagined this map many times, I think more so than just about any other map in the game. It appeared in the Battlefield Vietnam World War II Redux, it appeared in Battlefield 2, Battlefield 2142, now a weird futuristic version. Battlefield Heroes had it, Battlefield 1943 had it as one of its few maps, Battlefield Online had it, Battlefield 3, and Battlefield 5, which I think is the most updated and impressive version. Not only does Battlefield 5 have some of the most advanced engine lighting that we've seen from the franchise, but they just really fleshed out the island with some incredible foliage and detailed bases. And the gameplay has always been great on every iteration of this map, showcasing what the full Battlefield experience is, offering great infantry combat, vehicular combat, and aerial combat, all mixed together in some sort of crazy cacophony. Now, while Battlefield 1942 and Battlefield Vietnam proved that DICE could do historical battles impressively well, Battlefield 2 proved their hand in modern military combat in a more fictional sense, and the map Strike at Karkand exemplified their ability to do urban combat at scale. It debuted with Battlefield 2 and quickly became a fan favorite, featuring a much more laned layout and building-to-building firefights with limited tank and armored vehicles. The movie Black Hawk Down had really supercharged gamers' desire to live out their Middle Eastern combat fantasies, and Karkand delivered this for Battlefield fans. Now, unlike Wake Island, DICE haven't been as generous with their remakes of Karkand. It only appeared in Battlefield 2, Battlefield Online, and Battlefield 3. That said, the Battlefield 3 version was almost a landmark map in the game. Battlefield 3 had a few iconic urban warfare maps like Sen Crossing and Grand Bazaar, but they leaned more to one aspect of the gameplay like infantry or vehicle combat. Strike at Karkand had an impressive blend of infantry and vehicle engagements, plus some of the more impressive destruction and verticality. And despite its limited appearance, many fans still remember it as one of the best urban warfare maps in the franchise. Perhaps we'll see a remake for Battlefield 6. Now, of course, when it comes to maps that have really become anchor points for the franchise, what Battlefield game is complete without its traditional meat grinder? Infantry throwing themselves into each other over and over again to generate the most XP, and maybe even some decent gameplay can come out of it. And there's perhaps no greater meat grinder map in Battlefield history than Operation Metro, which first debuted in Battlefield 3. This was the map that DICE picked for the game's official beta, and it was pretty groundbreaking for its time. Literally. On rush, a giant explosion would crack open a massive hole in the map's exterior terrain, taking players underground into the subway tunnels after fighting in a beautiful outdoor park. With limited flanking routes and aggressively linear design, Operation Metro forced everyone to fight basically head-on. LMGs and thermal optics could absolutely cheese out the gameplay. The constant ear-ringing caused by explosions and the sweet satisfaction of finally breaking the front line and pushing the other team back. These are the things that Operation Metro is possibly most well known for, although many of the matches, especially in Battlefield 3, would grind to a halt at the mid-map choke points in which neither team could push each other back. DICE followed up Operation Metro with Operation Lockers in Battlefield 4, which was kind of like a spiritual reimagining set in a mountaintop prison. But Metro eventually made a proper return to Battlefield 4 with some minor layout tweaks, and then got a complete remake for Battlefield 5's Operation Underground. This World War II version added flanking routes and massively fleshed out the exterior areas, basically fixing all of the original map's problems. And in fact, it became one of my favorite maps of Battlefield 5, and I thought it was incredibly well balanced. However, it also sort of robbed the map of its crazy, clustered, close quarters personality, which some people fought back against. Battlefield 6 already has so many close quarter maps that it's hard to argue for them adding another even more close quarter map to the franchise, but I'm always up for seeing another rework of Operation Metro. Now, the Battlefield franchise is most famous for its Conquest game mode, and many of these epic, massive maps are built around this sort of open sandbox style environment. But back in the day, DICE did experiment by really focusing on maps built for a specific game mode other than Conquest. Their crowning achievement in this regard were the Rush maps for Battlefield Bad Company 2. And of these maps, Arica Harbor stood out as a fan favorite and even got a full remake for Battlefield 2042, which was actually pretty solid. And one of the hardest things to balance about Rush game modes is that they're very linear, and once teams learn maps, they can choke point them pretty hard, with some maps just rarely pushing past those choke point stalemates. But Arica Harbor had some of the best flow to it and some of the coolest map evolution, starting from a deserted base, moving down into a small village overlooking a coastline, and eventually entering a container harbor area. The map also perfectly showcased Bad Company's complete destruction approach, where after a match, the entire map could be leveled to the ground. And this was actually built in as part of the gameplay. If the defensive team was defending too well in their buildings, well, just blow up all the buildings, and eventually they run out of points to defend. This was a really cool evolution to the gameplay that hasn't really been replicated in many games since, but even so, Arica Harbor still has incredible flow, and Battlefield 2042 proved that it was still a fantastic map regardless of the game mode. Now, many of the map choices here exemplified some of the best aspects of certain elements of Battlefield, but what about a map that really showcased the best balance of infantry, vehicle, and aerial combat? Battlefield 3's Caspian Border instantly became the prime example of what many consider to be a perfectly tuned all-out warfare sandbox experience, where you could enjoy just about every feature of the game without feeling like any one of them, like vehicles or classes, had a huge advantage over the other. Infantry seemed to own the middle of the map with a difficult to traverse hilltop and covered forest area. Ground vehicles controlled a lot of the outer points, and air helped out where they could, assuming that they dealt with the AA tanks that could easily hide amongst the rocks, fields, and trees. So many crazy clips came from this map simply because it had it all and plenty of space for it as well. Add in some of that proto-Levolution event stuff with the radio tower crashing down, and you easily got one of the most iconic maps in Battlefield history. It was so beloved that Battlefield 4 brought it back with a massive concrete wall bisecting the map, and they even changed it so that when the tower fell, it added new paths to the center. This was actually a pretty awesome evolution to the map that I think improved it massively. This will be an all-time favorite of mine, and I sincerely hope to see a remake for Battlefield 6. Now, of course, there are so many incredible and iconic maps across the Battlefield franchise. I could easily make an hour-long video talking about the great ones, but instead I want to do a bunch of honorable mentions. Battlefield 5's Rotterdam is one of the most impressive and well-constructed maps in the franchise's history. Its recreation of a city that was more or less destroyed down to the ground during World War II is simply stunning, and the gameplay throughout the map offers all kinds of really fun verticality and building-to-building firefights. Likewise, Devastation, the destroyed version of this map, is probably one of the most detailed and atmospheric maps that DICE have ever created in an urban environment. Battlefield 1 also has some of my favorite maps that seem far less likely to get remakes just due to the setting of it being a World War I game, but Amiens was one of the game's most well-balanced and tactical feeling maps. It had incredible flow for both infantry and vehicles, walls, and the armored train that would bisect the map and provide an incredible comeback mechanic just added so much awesomeness to the gameplay, with artillery shells destroying buildings as you ran through them. Now, those are some of my top picks for the best maps in terms of spectacle and gameplay combined. If we're just looking at spectacle, you could mention stuff like Dalmavon Peak, but when it comes to gameplay flow and consistently fun gameplay, I'd be really curious to hear what your top picks are. You had a lot of great suggestions in the craziest maps video, so I'd love to hear those suggestions here. And if you want to check out the Battlefield franchise's craziest maps throughout the years, check out this video here. It approaches the concept from a completely different angle. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to drop me a like, subscribe for more content like it, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.